All right, we're continuing where we left off yesterday in the Dvar Malchut that the Rebbe spoke on Parshas Mattot-Massai, 30 years ago, right? 1991. And the Rebbe says that now we're reading Parshas Mattot-Massai, that we're saying at the end when we finish, because we're finishing the book of Numbers. So we say Chazak, Chazak, v'nitchazek. That's the custom in synagogues. As soon as they finish, everybody yells out Chazak, Chazak, v'nitchazek. Be strong, and we will be strengthened. Chazak, Chazak, v'nitchazek. So the Rebbe says, well, I mean, it doesn't really seem too appropriate to say it now. I mean, we always say it after we finish every book of the Torah. But now we're always finishing this book of the Torah. We finish it in what's called the 3 weeks. The 3 weeks, and especially the 3 weeks are reminding us of something that happened, like 2,000 years ago and then 2,500 years ago. The first temple was destroyed and the second temple was destroyed. And like we talked about yesterday, in many ways, this was more a disaster than the Holocaust and more traumatic. It affected all the Jews. It's been going on for already 2,000 years. The second temple, the first temple, right? Everybody felt it. It could be even a greater percentage of the Jewish population was massacred. Could be. If so, what is there to strengthen us over here? So we can say, no, maybe it means we have to be strong because we have so many enemies, we must be strong. Says the Rebbe, that's true. But it seems that it's saying a little bit deeper a message, that there's something in these tragedies itself that strengthens us. It's not that we have to be strong despite the tragedies, or we have to be we have to be strong because of them. Something in here is really good. So it says, first of all, this number 3, this sort of reminds us of the third redemption. The third temple. Oh, this is where we got up to. So he says, okay, in general, in Judaism, the number 3 represents what's called a chazaka. A chazaka means that it's, how do you say, it becomes reality. You do something 3 times, then it's considered to be like that's your nature, that you're going to do it forever. That you're going to do it forever. For instance, a person, the beginning of every month, he gives $100 to certain charity. So if he gives it every single month, then the 4th month, he's expected to give it. It's like that's part of, he has to say B'li Neder, or he'll do it without taking a vow. And there's a thing which happens 3 times is usually considered to be that's the way things are. Right? That's the way things are. A person puts tefillin on, a non-religious person puts tefillin on 3 times in the morning, it's every 3 days in a row, then it's like pretty certain he's going to continue. It's called the chazakah. So 3 times, and especially it's chazak, chazak, v'nitchazek. Chazak means 3 times. That's a chazakah. When you say 3 times 3, this shows that for sure, a tokev gam b'makom sheish menaged. This shows that we're going to be strong even if there's opposition. Like it's known, the number 1 shows on, we did this I think yesterday, number 1 shows that you have a good idea, you're holy. Number 2, that shows that there's something that opposes you. Biglal Metziota, because there's a number 2. Right? As long as a person is alone, then everything is okay. As soon as there's something opposite you, then there's a little bit of a problem. Number 2 shows division. The number 3, this shows on harmony. a third thing that can come and unite them. This shows a chozek v'tokef to kedusha, the number 3 in Judaism. If it's doing a holy thing, this shows on a certainty, even in the face of opposition. Number 3, that I'll always be able to unite the two opposites. So that's the number 3 in Judaism, shows on a stability. B'chozek v'tokef shebemistar shlosh. This shows the power and the stability of the number 3. Okay, so in this there's 2 ways. Number 1, mitzad elyon, because God gives you the power to stand against any opposition, and mitzad tachton, or that you yourself make a decision and you're going to be strong and negate any opposition. We did this last time, I think we did this last time, but we'll do it again. These 2 ways are showing 2 types of strength in Mattot-Massai, right? Let's say the Jewish people, for instance, somebody just wrote me, said, where is this? So Jewish people are supposed to be strong. Where's the strength of the Jewish people? What are you talking about? Jewish people are strong. Yeah, Jewish people are wishy-washy. You see, they're always right. The United Nations, they condemn us. And what do we say? We didn't mean it. Come on, let's be nice. Let's be friends. Come on, we're strong. Right? If the United Nations would condemn Ireland or any other country in the world, they say, who are you to tell us what to do? You're the Jews, right? The Jews in America, we just want to be like everybody else. Right? When the communists, the biggest communists, some of the worst were Jews. They just completely caved in. They didn't stay one. There was a couple. There was the previous Rebbe. There were other religious Jews that they stood against communism. Very rare. Very rare. So it says, so there's 2 types of strength how you can stand against opposition. Either God gives you an inspiration. God gives you an inspiration. Suddenly, just pops out from nowhere, like we just learned with Pinchas. Pops out from nowhere, gets this inspiration from above. It says the soul of Elijah the prophet came into him. And he just, all of a sudden, took things into his own hands. No one was doing it. He was the big hero. He had to do it. I said, that's very good. That's very good. The problem is that and when there is no opposition, or if there's no help from above, then you're in big problems. The other way of doing it to strengthen yourself is when the strength comes from below. It comes from inside of yourself. You become a hero. This is represented on the 2 different ways. Parshas Masay, here it says, Chozek, that's represented, these 2 different types of strength, either coming from above, inspiration from above, or you yourself do it from below. This is represented by the meaning of these 2, the names of our Torah portion, Mattot and Massai. Mattot means a staff, firm. Massai means traveling around, not so. A chazak the parshas Mattot. This is the chazak v'tokef that comes from God. Vayedaber Moshe al Rosh al Mattot, that God commanded. This is the power which is drawn down from Hashem, even in a place where there is an opposition. But the power that comes from this number 3, chazak, chazak, v'nit chazek, we say 3 times, being strong. So there's 2 types of being strong. One comes from above, and the other one from the God inspires you. The other one comes from a chozek v'tokef shemitzad tachton, that comes from us. Elomas Eben Israel, this power which is in serving the Jewish people, where the Jewish people serve in the world. Shemilirot hashrinuim, that despite all the differences and the changes of levels in the journeys that they made in the desert, we'll learn about this, right? 42 journeys. Lefi erech ma'amado u'matzavo shel hatachton, according to how the person is. But nimtzam tamid b'tenua shel halicha v'nesiya, you're always moving. From Egypt, from Mitzrayim to the land of Israel. Let's take an example here. Let's take 2 examples, right? We have the example, we have Pinchas, right? Pinchas, there he is, he's confronted with this problem there's this, one of the heads of the tribes is encouraging all the Jewish people to do a sin, and nobody knows what to do with him. Right? No one knows what to do with him. They can't stop him. So all of a sudden he gets this inspiration, and he runs in and saves the day. This is very good, but when he doesn't get this inspiration, what does he do? He's like everybody else. Right? Then let's take people, I'm just taking as an example, Jews that were in the Holocaust, Jews that were in, I know, Jews that were in Siberia because they were Jews. Right? The Jewish people throughout the generations, that they held on to their Judaism when it seemed that God had completely abandoned them. Here their families were killed. They were the Germans who were the most disgusting creations that God ever created. I mean, I don't know, maybe there could be more created, but I can't imagine. I mean, the terrible things that they did to just totally innocent people, killing. And they did it with such, vigor and joy. And they were winning. They were controlling the world. And the Jews that are supposed to be God's chosen people, they're being raped and murdered and burned and tortured and nevertheless, there were Jews that held on 100%. They said, the Hitler can control my body, but he's never going to control my soul. If I give in to Hitler, then if I stop putting on tefillin, that's a victory for the Nazis. They're never going to conquer me. Oh, this is a whole different world. This is what they call an unsung hero. Pinchas got his name in the papers. He got his name in the Torah. He got his name. Everybody knows who he was, right? Think of the hundreds of thousands, millions of Jews that defied to their very last moment the powers of evil, and they believed in God. That's not normal. Any normal person would say, forget it. Who needs this whole business? I'll just be, I'll be like the Nazis, a capo. Like Professor Viktor Frankl, he was in the Holocaust. He said, you can't blame those Jews that became capos because they were under tremendous duress. Until you get to that situation to see what you would do. Right? Any normal person that had a brain in his head would, do everything he could to stay alive. I mean, you go crazy. And here there were Jews that refused. They gave up their bread to other people, and they defied nature, and a lot of them defied it because of the fact that they're Jews. For God, he says that's a different type of power. That's a different type of strength. No matter where you are, no matter what the situation is, the power comes from yourself, from your own connection to God. Alpiza, according to this, we can explain the connection between Chazak and Massai. Why is it we say Chazak after Parshas Massai? Because there's two portions, right? Kiv and Shachozak, because the true power in the place where there's an opposite. This is stressed more by the second type, Massai B'nai Israel, by the fact that the Jewish people went through all sorts of different journeys, and despite the fact that it seemed in a lot of these journeys that God wasn't so much with them, there were a lot of journeys where they sinned. Asher Yatzu Me'eretz Yisrael, they worshipped the golden calf. Shalozu bilavad. Not only that, the chozek v'tokev of the light of the holiness was shined in every place without reckoning about who the opposition was, but even more, sheish isaskus menaged, that actually the Jewish people traveled in the desert, Mas'eh. They traveled in the desert, and they worked with the desert. They purified the desert to negate it totally. It says when they were in the desert, so there was the well of Miriam that it irrigated wherever they were, and that it made it into a fertile place. Until wherever they were, it transformed it to a certain degree to holiness. This is when you join Mattot-Massai together. In other words, both you get a revelation, inspiration from above, which then it's an infinite, and also it comes from you, which means it's permanent, internal and eternal. Hachuzak the Mattot, this power that the Jewish people get from Mattot, from what's called the staffs. Yesh bo maila ora kedusha shelo maila me'agbala. Then you can get godliness which is totally above anything you could imagine. But because it's God giving you this inspiration, and it's not relevant to you yourself, exactly the opposite. Lo mitchashvim bo. A person that gets this power, like we had with Pinchas, he doesn't even reckon with the opposition. There is no opposition for him. And he just does what he has to do. He's not worried about anything. But the power that comes from Masa'e, in other words, journeying, this has the good thing of bittul, surrender. Your surrender, bittul, that the opposition surrenders himself. And even more, the opposition can actually become harmonious with you. But because it's just the second type of strength comes from us, it's limited. And it can be changed. The Rebbe said in the last mimer that was published, at least that the Rebbe gave, as it was called Ata Tetzave, and the Rebbe said that there are a lot of Hasidim that are even here, that were present listening. And he said that when they were in Russia, they were lions. Nothing could stop them. Nothing. They were self-sacrificing every day, every moment to help another Jew, to do Torah, to do commandments, to provide a mikveh, to teach children. They sacrificed their lives on a daily basis, on an hourly basis. So, but as soon as they come to America, or to Israel, or to wherever it is, places where there's no opposition, so you don't see that they're so fiery anymore. They lost this fighting spirit. Right? Maybe not totally, because there's no opposition. So that's the disadvantage to the power which comes from Masa'e, power which comes from us, Judaism. Namely, that it wavers. It wavers. Sometimes and it depends on the situation a little bit. True, it's always there. But if there's no opposition, then, like the Jews when they came to the land of Israel, so they didn't have any opposition. As soon as everything became good, that was the whole story of all the shoftim, the judges, right? It was like 390 years, however long it was, and that it would happen over and over again. The Gentiles around us would attack us. The Jews all of a sudden would all repent. They'd get a lead. God would send a leader that would save them. He would decimate the enemy, and then everything would be fine, good. And as soon as it was good, then the Jews again would lapse into assimilation mode, and then the non-Jews would attack them, and they would pray to God, and they would repent, and it went over and over again. So in other words, the problem of it coming from below, if the inspiration comes from us, is that true, it comes from us, it belongs to us, but it depends a little bit on the time. But if the inspiration comes from above, then it's unchanging. So ideally, if they're both together, that both God gives us inspiration constantly and it comes from ourselves, then any situation, the result of that is a happiness. That you can deal with the world and you can transform the world. You're happy just to be here. You're happy that you have a job. Dalid. Okay, so again, let's just see. The Rebbe is trying to point out that the reason that everyone in the world is here is in order to fix up the world. And the reason the Jews are here is in order to inspire the non-Jews, that they're part of the world, to serve the creator of the universe. But in order to do this, you have to have inspiration. And inspiration can come from two ways. Either it can come from above, or it can come from yourself. Or there's a third option, and that is from both. Both from above and from yourself. That's the best way. Yesh if we can also add on Shachibur, the Mattot-Massai, when these two Torah portions are joined together, Matot and Massai, this is the join, B'Revi'i. In Revi, what do you mean in Revi? The Torah portion is divided up, the Torah reading of every week is divided up into 7 parts. And from that, we get 7 people called up to the Torah on Shabbat. 7 people. Each person gets one of these portions. Right? There's always a Kohen that's called up first. If there's no Kohen, then anyone else can be called up. And then after that is called up, if there's a Kohen, then a Levi is called up after him for number 2. If there's no Kohen, then you call up anybody for number 1, and the second is anybody except for a Levi. You can't call up a Levi if there's no Kohen for number 2. And then after that, you call up other people. Right? So 7 people. In the fourth reading, the fourth portion, that's when it joins together. Matot and Massai. The end of Pasha's Matot ends, and Massai begins. Right? There are some years when it's separate. That on one Shabbat we read Parshat Matot, and the Parsha afterwards we read about Massai, the 42 journeys of the Jews in the desert. But this year it's joined. When is it joined? In the fourth person that you call up on Shabbat, the fourth reading. Shekorim Revi b'siyum Parshat Matot. You're reading the end of Matot and the beginning of Massai. By means of this, it becomes a chazak. What does it mean chazak? That's the joining of them all together, of joining Matot and Massai together. This is read on the 4th Aliyah, and this is the end of the 4th book, right? The book of Numbers, right? It was like Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, 4th book of the Torah. Al Pisha Mispar, Afal, even though that the number 3 shows on Chozek, shows on strength and stability, Vatokef, Gamba Matzav Shel Nigud, even when there's opposition. So number 3, that's the ultimate, right? So no, there's something a little bit better. Mikol Makom, nevertheless, Lioto Behemshech Le'echad B'Shtayim, because number 3 comes after 1 and 2, Nirgash, you can feel that there's a connection between the two of them. As you can still feel that there's a little bit of opposition. Av Shemachabara Echad Elyon She'enyanu Amshacha Milamai Lamata, with the other one, which is from below. Nevertheless, you can feel that there's 2 opposites. Elyon v'tachton Amshachas ve'Allah. Lochen, therefore, Shlemos and Mititz of strength and power is Revi, is number 4. Darga Miuchedes, this is a special level on its own. She'enu behemshech le'echa v'shtayim. Let's see how we can get an example. The first example comes into my mind is like this. Let's say you have a country. Okay, you have America, the United States. Everyone is really divided, super divided. So let's say you're on one side. So there's one, you've got your side. Then there's the other side. That's number 2. The ideal situation is if there's somehow or other peace between them. If they can work together. If they're working against each other, you got a civil war. It's terrible. So how do you get somebody, between them? They pick an arbitrary person, comes in, and that everybody likes. Right? Everybody likes. Is it possible? I don't know. But let's say there is such a thing. Here you pick a third person. Everybody likes this person. This third person, he comes in, and he becomes the new president. He's the president. Everybody likes him, and he knows how to weave around and find a way to make peace between everybody. So that's 1, 2, and 3. The problem is that you look at this third person, this president, and you always remember the different opinions. You always remember that there's an argument and that there's someone. Right? Let me take another example. All right, take another example. A person who's an alcoholic. So he's an alcoholic. There's a person that's normal, then he has alcohol, and then he goes to, let's say, Alcoholics Anonymous. So he goes to Alcoholics Anonymous, and that makes peace between himself and his alcoholism. But he's always got to remember all the time, I have to keep away from alcoholism. I have to. True, he's on a third level, but he always has to remember these other two levels. A higher thing is, let's take the first example, right? A king. A king. A king comes in and he says, everyone does what I want. There's no opposites anymore. No such thing. Everyone from now on is just an American. That's all you are. You're an American, and you're going to do exactly what I say, and you're going to think what I say, and you're going to say what I say. You're going to do a king. A king. If everybody accepts the king, this is not like a president that everybody, he can make peace between the two different sides. Number 3, this is number 4. This is a whole different level totally. He reveals a whole different level. You are now Americans. That's all there is. I'm giving a whole different definition of what an American is. An American, in the morning, he stands on his left foot for 15 minutes, and then everybody eats only, apple pie, nothing else, only apple pie. That's what the king says. So you forget about all of your differences. That's the number 4. Same thing. Let's take the person who's the alcoholic, right? He's an alcoholic. All of a sudden, he says, "Wow, I'm changing my whole life." He gets a lobotomy. I don't know what it is. He does something to change himself totally. He does something totally. A lot of times that can be the example. He all right, let's just forget that. He changes himself totally. He goes to a psychiatrist. The psychiatrist gives him an injection, and suddenly he realizes this is a true human being. He thinks to himself, what did I ever take drugs for? What was ever? I was all 3 things that I was before. What I thought was normal, what I thought was being an alcoholic, what I thought was the cure, Alcoholics Anonymous, all those 3 things, forget them. Got a whole new standard. But that's called Revi'i. That's number 4. The number 4 shows a darga miyucheres b'fnei atzmo, a level which is higher than and unique in itself. She'eino behemshech, and it does not come to anything that was before it. Shabo mudgashet. That's a shleimus hisyashvus. This is the ultimate level of certainty and power. Like a throne, like a chair that has 4 feet on it, 4 legs. Shu bofen ityashvut yoter. This is a way which is much more stable than a chair that has only 3 legs. That 4 shows on a much greater strength than the number 3. So what is the Rebbe talking about all this for? We're in the world in order to make this world a perfect place. What do you mean make it perfect? To make this world that every detail of the world will reveal its true potential. Fruit trees will provide fruit. The ground will provide plenty, right? Human beings will be intelligent. They'll be loving. They won't be destructive. All of the good things will come out. The only reason there are bad things is because the good is not being revealed. As soon as the good is revealed, then... So that's represented by the number 4. The number 4 is a totally new level of world, let's say for our purposes, represented by Melech HaMashiach, the King Moshiach. He'll reveal a whole new level of reality. No one will think about heaven, hell, themselves, nothing egotistical at all. That all the only thoughts will be a whole different way of reality. And that's represented by the number 4. What about this? Is something higher than that? The Rebbe is going to say there's also the number 5. And we're going to talk about what that is later. Essentially, what the Rebbe is trying to say to us is that real reality is waiting for us, and it can only be found in this physical world. Real, true reality. And it has to be by harmonizing this world with the creator of the universe, bringing everything together. And that's going to be the idea of the Torah, as we're going to talk about more, God willing, tomorrow. Now let's just do the Yom Yom for today. Ha Yom Yom. There are two characteristic expressions in Hasidus. A Jew knows godliness and he feels what is above nature. How does he say? A Yid darkent Gettlichkeit und fühlt die Übernaturlichkeit und bedarf auf dem kein Beweisung haben. A Jew feels godliness, a Jew feels God, and he feels godliness and needs no proof. This is a thing which is inherent in the soul of every Jew, that God exists and that there is such a thing as godliness, right? That tefillin are holy, that a Sefer Torah is holy. That's one saying. Number two, a Yid nit will and nit can sein abgereisen from Gettlichkeit. A Jew does not want and is not able to be separated from God. We see that there are a lot of Jews that are, because either they don't know any better, or they're temporarily crazy. Because a true person, like a normal person, would not cut off his own hand. Take a saw and cut off your own hand. A normal person doesn't do it. Right? A normal person doesn't want to hurt himself. I always see people that do hurt themselves. It's because either they're ignorant, they don't know they're hurting themselves, or because they're insane, they're temporarily mad. The truth is that both of these expressions are really the same. A Jew recognizes God, and that's why he neither wants nor is able to be separated from godliness. Have a good day with Moshiach now. See you at 3 o'clock, I hope. We'll continue learning Chumash and Beit HaMikdash, and we'll learn the laws of the 9 days. We're just going to start the 3 weeks to 9 days. Have a good day, and hope to see you all. Shalom uvracha.